They were the Johnsons, Texas royalty. A stunning couple with a storybook life, a lavish home in Pearland, 3 beautiful children, thriving businesses, and a social media presence that radiated perfection. Tierra, the glamorous beauty mogul. Kamari, the charming real estate tycoon. Together, they were the couple everyone envied, until envy turned into horror. Behind the filters, the coordinated photo shoots, and the heart-eye emojis was a marriage rotting from the inside. And one night, after Cam came home smelling like another woman, Tierra looked him dead in the eye and asked, "Is she more important to you than me?" He smirked. Cold. Dismissive. And that was the moment everything changed. How does love rot into hatred? How does a woman go from building an empire with her husband, to plotting his murder? What makes betrayal so raw, so consuming, that it warps the mind and poisons the soul? This isn't just a story about a failed marriage. It's a story about obsession. About control. About a woman pushed past the edge by the people she trusted most. Before we dive into this shocking case, like this video and subscribe for more chilling tales of love, lies, and betrayal. Tierra Johnson was more than just an influencer, she was a movement. At 33 years old, she had built an empire from lip gloss and loyalty. Her beauty brand wasn't just about skincare and contour, it was about reclaiming power, radiating confidence, and teaching black women everywhere that luxury wasn't reserved for the rich and famous. Tierra was the luxury. Her page was a mosaic of intentional beauty, flawless selfies, behind the scenes of her kids' birthdays, morning routines with affirmations and edge control, late-night deep talks with her audience about healing and self-worth. She didn't just have followers. She had disciples. A digital sisterhood that watched her build everything from the ground up. And at the center of her universe, always, was her husband, Cam Johnson. Cam, 36, had that kind of magnetism that made people lean in when he spoke. A tall, broad-shouldered real estate investor with the kind of smile that made you second-guess your own reflection. He was polished, articulate, and always posted with intention. "Black men deserve softness too," he'd caption a reel of himself brushing his daughter's hair. Another would show him closing a real estate deal, then scooping Tierra into a kiss, like success and love walked hand in hand in his world. Together, Cam and Tierra embodied what so many strived for: black love, black wealth, black family. They had been married for 10 years. A full decade of building, branding, and blending their lives into something that looked like legacy. The kind of marriage people prayed for, screenshot, and studied. 10 years of inside jokes, photo shoots, arguments, reconciliations, and anniversary trips where Tierra always wore white and Cam always made a toast. They called themselves Team Johnson. And it wasn't just a slogan. Their followers had hashtags, t-shirts, even prayer journals with their quotes. They appeared on couple podcasts, marriage panels, Black Excellence reels on TikTok. Tierra once said in an interview, "We're not perfect, but we're intentional. We choose each other, every single day." It was hard to believe that behind that statement, was a lie unraveling. Their Pearland home was the kind people pinned on vision boards, floor-to-ceiling windows, a designer kitchen, soft golden lighting. Their 3 kids were always dressed in matching outfits, often photographed laughing on family vacations to Turks and Caicos, Disney World, Aspen. Tierra would caption those moments with things like, "Grateful for this season," or "God's timing is never wrong." It all looked so effortless, so warm. So real. But sometimes, what people show you is only what they need you to believe. Because behind the ring lights and perfect angles, there were late nights when Tierra cried herself to sleep. Birthday trips that ended in silence. Business meetings she attended alone because Cam was busy. And smiles that were more survival than sincerity. To the public, they were goals. But in the shadows of their curated perfection, a storm had been brewing for years. A storm Tierra never posted about. Never hinted at. Not once. Because when you're the blueprint, the brand, the wife everyone wants to be, you don't get to fall apart in public. You do it quietly. Until one day, you don't. In every love story, there's a turning point. A moment when the warmth fades. When the familiar touch starts to feel foreign. When the words become shorter, the phone calls fewer, and the silence between them gets louder than the "I love yous." For Tierra, that moment didn't come with fireworks. It came in fragments, text messages that went unanswered, dinners eaten alone, eyes that stopped meeting hers across the room. Cam had grown distant. Cold. Unreachable. He no longer came home after work. He was always out with clients or spending long hours at the golf course, whining and dining potential investors while Tierra sat at home, scrolling through old photos of their perfect life, wondering when exactly she became invisible to the man she once considered her soulmate. And Tierra had grown restless. Despite her booming success in the beauty industry, the curated perfection of her social media life, and the admiration of thousands of women who envied her black love story, she felt like a woman trapped in a gilded cage. Beautiful on the outside. Broken on the inside. There were nights she would stare at herself in the mirror, flawless makeup, silk bonnet, soft lighting, and still feel empty. Because what good is being a queen if your king no longer looks at you like you're his everything? She had been unhappy for years. Cam's indifference, his emotional unavailability, his growing disinterest in her dreams, her body, her voice. It all piled up like dust in a forgotten room. He flirted with other women openly. Commented on other influencers' pictures with fire emojis like he was single. Slid into DMs with a boldness that made Tierra question if he even cared whether she found out. And yet, she stayed. Because leaving meant failure. Because she still believed, deep down, that the man she fell in love with might come back. But the man she loved had been gone for a long time. And when Tierra finally stopped making excuses, when she let herself go deep into the belly of suspicion and started digging into Cam's secrets, what she uncovered shattered her soul in ways words couldn't describe. Her husband of 10 years wasn't just cheating. He was living a double life. A full-blown affair. With her best friend, Mecca Holt. They weren't just sneaking around behind closed doors. They had been together for 3 years. 3 years of private dinners, weekend trips masked as business, and hotel stays charged to their shared credit card. 3 years of betrayal dressed up in casual hellos and sisterhood smiles. And it didn't stop there. Mecca had Cam's baby. Tierra had thrown the baby shower. She had rubbed Mecca's belly. Prayed over her. Poured her heart into a friendship she thought was solid. Posted about how excited she was to be an auntie. But the whole time, she was loving a lie. A deep, cutting lie that lived in her guest room, shared wine with her on girls' nights, and sat across from her at dinner tables, knowing full well she was sleeping with Cam. Mecca wasn't just a friend. She was Tierra's soul sister. They had met in 7th grade. Spent countless nights dreaming about their futures, swearing they'd be in each other's weddings, godparents to each other's kids, old ladies sipping wine on porches one day. And Mecca had smiled in Tierra's face while growing a child with her husband. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was biblical. Tierra didn't scream. Didn't throw dishes or set clothes on fire. She filed for divorce. Immediately. Quietly. Decisively. She thought it would be simple. He cheated. She found out. She filed for divorce. But Cam had no intention of letting Tierra go. When she served him the papers, he didn't flinch. He didn't yell. He didn't even apologize. He just looked at her with a strange mix of entitlement and disbelief, as if she was the one who had broken their vows. He refused to sign. Point blank. Said it would destroy the family. Said the kids would never forgive them. Said the internet would eat them alive if the Black Excellence Johnsons suddenly split. But Tierra saw right through it. This wasn't about love. It was about control. The man who had made her feel invisible for years was now clinging to her, not because he missed her, but because he didn't want to lose the version of himself that she helped him create. Tierra was his image. His polish. His protector in public spaces. She was the glue, the grace, the goddess people admired beside him. Without her, Cam was just another charming cheat with a pretty smile and no integrity. He told her Mecca was a mistake. Said it didn't mean anything. That the baby wasn't planned. That he still loved her, his wife. That he always had. But Tierra couldn't even hear those words without tasting blood in her mouth. Because love doesn't come with secret children. Love doesn't sneak around with your best friend for 3 years and come home like nothing happened. Love doesn't humiliate you in front of the world, then expect you to smile and carry on. Tierra didn't want revenge. Not yet. She wanted freedom. But Cam made it clear, he wouldn't give it to her. Not easily. Not quietly. Not without a fight. And that's when the unraveling began. Tierra had always been in control. Of her image. Her brand. Her tone. Her children. Her business. She was the kind of woman who smiled through pain, who turned tears into tutorials, who wore betrayal like it was blush on her cheekbones. But behind the scenes, she was falling apart. She started journaling, at first as therapy. A way to process the grief. The anger. The humiliation. But the pages got darker with each entry. What began as heartbreak slowly mutated into obsession. She couldn't stop thinking about them, Cam and Mecca. About the nights they must have spent together while she was curled up in bed alone. About the baby. That baby. The way Cam looked at that child. The love in his eyes that she hadn't seen in years. Tierra would scroll through Mecca's hidden burner account, one she found through a tagged photo, and stare at pictures of the boy. Cam's eyes. Cam's smirk. Tierra's rage. It haunted her. That baby wasn't just a product of infidelity. He was a walking monument to everything she had lost. And it was like Cam wanted her to suffer. To stay tied to the pain. He smiled for the cameras. Acted like nothing happened. Posted family flashbacks like they were still one big happy unit, all while refusing to sign the papers that would free her. Tierra couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts raced at night, looping like a reel stuck on one image, Mecca's hand on Cam's chest. Mecca's laugh in her kitchen, that baby's cries echoing in a space that was never meant for them. And somewhere between the rage and the grief, something inside Tierra broke. The world saw a woman glowing in designer sunglasses, sipping champagne, preaching about healing and boundaries. But behind the scenes, she was a woman unraveling. And when a woman like Tierra reaches her breaking point, after the betrayal, after the lies, after the denial of peace, what comes next isn't always logical. It isn't always fair. It's just inevitable. Then came the final straw. It started like so many other nights. Cam came home late. Again. The kids were already asleep. The house was quiet, still lit by soft lamp light and scented candles Tierra had burned to calm herself. She sat in silence at the dining table, still in full makeup, wearing a silk robe she hadn't changed out of since sunset. She didn't greet him. Didn't ask where he'd been. She just stared. And as soon as he walked past her, the scent hit her like a slap across the face. Vanilla orchid. Mecca's perfume. It wasn't subtle. It clung to him. Drenched him. A deliberate insult. Tierra's fingers tightened around a wine glass she hadn't sipped from in hours. Cam tossed his keys on the counter, pulled out his phone, and leaned against the fridge like it was just any other Wednesday night. "Did you see the email from the school?" he said casually. "Kumari's teacher wants us to come in. Do you love her? Is she more important to you than me?" Her voice cut through the air like a razor. Cam paused. Looked up. Met her eyes. Then he laughed. Not loud. Just a breath. You just being too dramatic, I don't owe you that answer. That was it. That was the moment. Not the affair. Not the child. Not the years of coldness or the refusal to sign the papers. It wasn't the lies or the betrayal that pushed her off the edge. It was the audacity. That simple, soulless answer. The casual cruelty in his voice. The shrug in his tone. As if she was a nuisance. A relic. As if she was the one disrespecting him by even asking. Tierra stood up slowly. Her bare feet made no sound on the marble floor. She walked past him toward the kitchen sink, opened the drawer, and pulled out the largest knife they owned, an 8-inch stainless steel chef's blade Cam had bought for her last Christmas. He didn't notice. He was still looking at his phone. She turned. And then. She stabbed him. Once. In the side. He gasped, dropped the phone. She stabbed him again. And again. 12 times total. 12 sharp, clean, purposeful thrusts. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. Her face was blank. Her breathing steady. Like she wasn't even in her body. Cam collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath him, soaking into the grout of the pristine kitchen tiles she used to scrub every Sunday. He reached for her once, but she stepped back. Watching. When it was over, she stood over him for a moment. Looked down at the man who once made her feel invincible. Who once whispered dreams into her ear and kissed her on stage in front of thousands. Now he was just, quiet. For Tierra it wasn't over. Not yet. Mecca, one who she called her sister who had betrayed her, was still breathing. So she walked to the sink, rinsed the knife under warm water. Scrubbed the handle with a dish towel. Then she grabbed her keys. Still barefoot. Still wearing the same silk robe. Blood splattered on her arms. Her legs. Her chest. She didn't change clothes. She didn't check on the kids. She just walked out the front door and got in her car. The engine purred to life, headlights illuminating the empty driveway like a spotlight on the next act. She put the car in drive. And headed straight to Mecca Holt's apartment. Tierra had driven past that street countless times before. She knew every curve, every corner, every streetlight. She had sat on that same couch in Mecca's apartment more times than she could count. They'd laughed, drank wine, braided each other's hair, and whispered secrets like sisters. But tonight, Tierra wasn't just passing by. She wasn't just a visitor in Mecca's world anymore. Tonight, she was on a mission. A mission to finish what had already begun. The baby was going to grow up without a father. Cam's betrayal was a stain that could never be erased, and Mecca was going to understand the full price of that betrayal. Tierra could still feel the weight of the wedding vows she had spoken, promises she had kept, while Cam and Mecca had ripped them apart. She could still taste the sweetness of her best friend's baby shower, the joy she'd felt planning it, not knowing the truth, the dark truth that was festering behind her back. She gripped the steering wheel harder, her knuckles white. The night air outside was thick with heat, pressing in like a fever. She wasn't crying. Not anymore. She couldn't cry. Her heart was hollow, and the pain had burned away all her tears. As she drove, her mind replayed the beginning of it all, the first time she and Mecca met in high school, the moment Cam proposed with that bright smile, the baby shower. The images swirled in her head, each one stoking the fire that was consuming her from the inside. With every memory, her grip tightened on the wheel. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. As Tierra sped down FM 518, the flashing red and blue lights suddenly filled her rearview mirror. Her heart skipped. She glanced over her shoulder, barely noticing the Fort Bend County Sheriff cruiser pulling up behind her. A routine traffic stop. Broken taillight. The insignificance of it should have made her laugh. It was a minor detail in the grand chaos of what she was about to do. But when the officer approached her car, his eyes widened as he caught sight of the blood. Her blood. Cam's blood. It was everywhere. Tierra's pulse quickened, but she didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She simply sat there, staring ahead, numb. Her body moved on its own, like it had detached from her mind. When the officer yelled for her to step out of the vehicle, her feet obeyed without hesitation. She raised her hands slowly, letting him cuff her, all while her thoughts remained a whirlwind of darkness. The officer searched the car. His voice trembled slightly as he found the blood-soaked knife wrapped in a dish towel on the passenger seat. It was the same knife she had used just hours earlier to end Cam's life. The same knife that was now a cold reminder of the final straw that broke her. But that wasn't all. In the cup holder, the officer found something far more damning, a crumpled photo of Cam, Mecca, and the baby, smiling together. That picture, so innocent, so damning, was the catalyst. Cam's betrayal. Mecca's betrayal. Both in a single frame. Tierra didn't resist as the officers led her to the patrol car. She was eerily calm, the weight of her actions sinking in, but there were no tears. No anger. Just the overwhelming emptiness of everything she had lost. When they arrived at the station, the walls seemed to close in around her, the fluorescent lights harsh against her skin. Inside the interrogation room, Tierra didn't need anyone to ask questions. She spoke before they could say a word. "I did it," she said. Her voice was flat, distant. She didn't seem like a woman who had just murdered her husband. She didn't seem like a woman who had just taken the life of the man who had broken her heart, shattered her dreams, and betrayed her in ways that were beyond repair. She spoke slowly, recounting everything, the affair with Mecca, the child, the betrayal that had festered in her heart for years, and the final act she'd committed to end it all. She even confessed to the second murder she had planned. "I was going to kill her, too," Tierra said, her eyes glassy. "I was going to go to Mecca's apartment. I knew where it was. I sat there. I've been there before. I was going to finish what started tonight. The baby was going to grow up without a father, and Mecca was going to feel the same pain I felt." The detectives listening to her were visibly shaken. There were no tears. No screaming. No desperation. It was as though she had surrendered herself to the truth, to the loss of everything she had known. A detective later told a reporter, she wasn't crying for herself. She wasn't crying for what she'd done. She was crying for the life she lost. The years she couldn't get back. Tierra's confession echoed in the sterile interrogation room, but inside, she was already somewhere else. Somewhere far away from the chaos of her life. At trial, the courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Tierra Johnson sat at the defendant's table, her eyes cold, her face unreadable. The trial was a spectacle, but for Tierra, it was just the inevitable conclusion of everything that had led her here. The defense didn't bother to claim innocence. There was no question of whether she had committed the crime. No. Instead, her team argued that she was suffering from extreme emotional disturbance, citing the years of betrayal, manipulation, and deceit that had broken her spirit. They painted Tierra as a woman who had been pushed to the edge, who had snapped after years of emotional and psychological torment. The defense emphasized her mental unraveling, the way Cam had distanced himself, the affair with Mecca, and the child that was the final blow to her psyche. The betrayal wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a betrayal of everything Tierra thought she knew about love, friendship, and family. The years of loyalty, of building a life together, had been reduced to nothing. They argued that, after being repeatedly deceived and disrespected, Tierra's state of mind was in tatters, and in her devastation, she acted without thinking, without control. But the prosecution wasn't buying it. They countered with hard evidence, evidence that painted a picture of cold, calculated premeditation. GPS data showed that Tierra had purposefully driven toward Mecca's apartment after killing Cam. Her journals were full of dark, obsessive thoughts, detailing her unraveling mind and the depth of her rage. The knife she used to murder Cam was found in her car, tucked inside a dish towel, soaked with his blood. The blood-stained hoodie she wore that night was a silent testament to the brutality of her actions. The evidence didn't point to an out-of-control woman acting in the heat of the moment, it pointed to a woman who had planned her revenge with chilling precision. As the trial progressed, the courtroom was silent except for the voices of the lawyers and the occasional rustling of papers. It was a dramatic contrast to the chaos inside Tierra's mind, a mind that was no longer clouded by emotion but by a cold, calculating desire to make the world understand. And then came the moment that sent a chill down everyone's spine. A question was posed to Tierra by the prosecutor: "Do you regret not making it to Mecca's apartment? Do you regret not killing her too?" The courtroom held its breath as Tierra looked up, her eyes empty, her voice steady. "No," she said, the words hanging in the air like poison. "Because if I had, I wouldn't be here to explain why." The room fell into a tense silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Those words cut through the air like a knife, colder than anything else in the entire trial. A woman who had already lost everything, who had killed in cold blood, who was now telling the world that she was willing to go further, to end even more lives in her pursuit of justice for the years she had been deceived. It didn't matter what anyone said after that. The jury knew what they had to do. The evidence was undeniable. Tierra was convicted of first-degree murder with intent to commit a second. The sentence was harsh but fitting: 2 consecutive life sentences, with no possibility of parole for 50 years. But as the judge called for the verdict, Tierra sat in her seat, unmoved. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She had long ago lost the capacity for either. She was simply empty. As the guards led her away in handcuffs, there was one final, bitter exchange. Mecca was sitting in the courtroom, holding her child in her arms. She hadn't looked up once during the entire trial. She was silent, still, almost as though she couldn't bear to acknowledge the woman she had betrayed. But Tierra, as she was being escorted out, turned toward her one last time. Her eyes locked onto Mecca's. There was no sympathy in them, no anger, just a deep, twisted satisfaction in the finality of the moment. With a broken smile, Tierra spoke her last words to the woman who had shattered her world. "You don't get to win," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You just get to live with what you did." And with that, Tierra was led out of the courtroom, her fate sealed. The case made national headlines, but not for the reasons many expected. It wasn't just about the murder of Cam or the near murder of Mecca. It was about the complexity of betrayal and the way it can twist a person's mind until nothing is left but destruction. Tierra's story wasn't just about a woman scorned, it was about the psychological toll of being lied to, manipulated, and discarded by the people you trust most. It was about a woman who had lost everything and, in her grief and rage, decided to make the world understand her pain. Tierra's story is still remembered today as one of the most disturbing and unforgettable crimes in Texas history, a tale of love, betrayal, and vengeance that will haunt everyone who hears it for years to come. Tierra Johnson's case isn't just about a murder. It's about what happens when a person's soul is slowly eaten alive by betrayal. When the love you gave becomes a weapon used against you. When the friend you once called sister becomes the woman who lays in your bed, touches your husband, and carries his child while smiling in your face. Tierra didn't just lose her marriage, she lost her identity. Piece by piece, over the years, until there was nothing left but rage wearing her face. Cam's refusal to let her go, even after destroying her trust, was the final spark. He didn't love her, he loved control. He loved the image, the brand, the idea of having a beautiful, obedient wife and a secret second life on the side. And when Tierra asked for freedom, he laughed in her face. Called her overdramatic. Told her Mecca was a mistake, but never stopped seeing her. In the end, Tierra wasn't trying to win him back. She was trying to reclaim the version of herself that died quietly every time he disrespected her, every time he looked through her like she was invisible. So when the knife went in, once, twice, 12 times, it wasn't just Cam she was killing. It was every silent scream. Every night she sat alone, pretending not to know. Every baby onesie she folded for Mecca, thinking she was helping a friend. Every time she braided Mecca's hair and ignored the whisper in her gut. It was all of that. And by the time the cops pulled her over, she wasn't Tierra anymore. She was the remains of what Cam and Mecca had done. What happened that night will echo forever. In the headlines. In the courtroom transcripts. In the eyes of Mecca's child, who will one day grow up and read about the blood-soaked trail that led to his existence. Tierra's story forces us to ask the uncomfortable questions, the ones we don't like to answer. Was this inevitable? Or could it all have been prevented, if Cam had simply let her go? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And if this story shook you to your core, hit that like button and subscribe. Where we uncover the dark, twisted truths behind the crimes that leave us breathless. Until next time, stay safe. And stay watching.